may know him from his own YouTube channel, Going South. Although he seems to be going north every time I talk to the man, but his YouTube channel, Going South.
Yes.
You know, we had Jeremy
Yeah,
Corbyn.
everything's going south. Yeah,
Everything
sure.
is
It's all
going
going south, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's going south, but that it's not all or nothing. It doesn't mean that it goes south until everything completely vanishes.
Yeah, but do you think
right? Which many people can easily say that it's all going south. There's absolutely nothing we can do.
When I saw skies were red, I was born and I was dead. When I saw mushroom head, I was born and I was dead. When I saw mushroom head, I was born and I was dead. I gotta keep my distance. I gotta keep my distance. I gotta keep my
All right. So here we are on the beach in Greenland, and this is a tree, a log that's gone all the way from Siberia, from the forests, down here to Greenland, and it's either taken the east coast of Greenland to get here, or the narrow strait down the west coast to get down to the capital Nuuk. In any case, it's a very nice bench and a place to go down to watch the ocean. And you got blue ocean here, so what's all this talk about the famous blue ocean event? Well, it's not just sort of something blue which is also ocean. It's a specific meaning of the blue ocean and the blue ocean event, and we'll look at that tonight. So here is the Arctic Ocean, and a part of that is called the Central Arctic Basin, because you have different named oceans around the edges here. Here is the Kara Sea, here is the Barents Sea, and this is the Greenland Sea down here. So the Central Arctic Basin is about like hereabouts, and it's of course defined in the map vectors. So it's possible to apply those vectors on the on these charts from University of Hamburg, so that you get you can get a script to count how much ice is in every sea, right? And a guy called Vipnius, his artist name is Vipnius, he does that every day. He sets his computer to calculate how much ice and freezes or melts or moves in and out of each of the seas, which is a fantastic job. And of course, when he does that and publishes the numbers, we can see how soon or how fast we are losing ice in this most frigid, this coldest region of the Arctic. So this is a slide that shows the day so far with the least ice, with the least sea ice extent, and that was back in 2012, September. And when I calculate the chances of having a blue ocean event in the Arctic, I have chosen to look at just the Central Arctic Basin, which is defined on maps, as I mentioned. And the reason I do that is because on this very day, in September 2012, the ice that you see here, 99.7% of that ice is within the borders of the CAB, the Central Arctic Basin. So, because on the day of the lowest ice so far, almost 100%, 99.7%, was in this very area, that makes it very useful in terms of finding how fast this area is losing ice. We can sort of just disregard all these peripheral seas, even the Beaufort and the Chukchi, because they will melt out anyway, at least in a year where you lose everything, or you lose everything apart from 1 million square kilometers, which is the IPCC scientific definition of virtually ice-free. So to have a blue ocean event, you have to get below the 1 million line. And an easy way to see if we are approaching that is that the Greenland land area is about 2 million, slightly more than 2 million square kilometers. So when you got an amount of ice about half the size of Greenland, then you are at about 1 million square kilometers, and that is the limit for virtually ice-free Arctic. And the reason it's not zero, the reason it's 1 million and not zero, is because you will always have some kind of, fjords and far away, shadowy places where you will have some ice lurking, and also you will also have calved icebergs from the glaciers floating around in the water, and so it's not realistic to expect absolute zero ice. So, but with less than 1 million, it's practically ice free because that means all the ice will sort of just be floating around, and most of the North Pole area and stuff will be blue ocean or blue sea. So we are focusing on this part of the ice here, not this and not this down here, and not this little patch here. So 99.7% of what you can see here is within those cab borders, right? So this is a chart that has already calculated how much you would have to lose or melt every day in order to get to that blue ocean event. How much ice do we have right now in the cab, and how much would have to melt every day for the last 100 days of the melt season to get down to below 1 million within the cab. And you can see that this red dotted line, it goes up and down a bit, and that's based on how much ice loss we have every day, or even how much gain we have, because then it will be, if you don't melt anything but you gain some ice either by freezing or by transport from the other seas, then it will be harder to get down to ice free. So then you can see that goes up. And the blue line is how much we actually lose per day. So it's like, it's a sort of very start of the melting season in the coldest region of the Arctic. So sometimes you lose a little and then you gain a little, and so it goes sort of up and down. And on this chart, it's only one day where you actually melt more than what you would have to melt every day. And that's why we had only a 3% chance for this to go to a blue ocean event. But we will see on the following days here. Yeah, there you have at least melt. It's not below zero, so there is some melt. And some melt on July 4th. July 5th, you almost get up to the requirement, but not quite. Close but no cigar. And then July 6th, we had a melt of about 82,000 cubic square kilometers. So that was better than the melt requirement. And for the last day, July 7th, we're also above the requirement, and that means you can see that the red line is falling. That means it will be slightly easier. If we can keep up the same melt, it will be slightly easier per day for the rest of the 100 days, right? So what does this mean for the chance? For the chances of a blue ocean event? Of course, it's better chances because you have more days above the requirement. So now we are up to 10% chance of a blue ocean event. At least, by the way, I've chosen to calculate it on this setup. And you can see there are 4 other years, 2016, 19, 17, and 19. And of course, they won't succeed in having a blue ocean event because it never happened before. It never happened in like 2 or 3 million years. So if it happens this year, it will be the first time it happens. But I've included the other years so that you can have some sense of where we're at. You can compare it to the other years, where you can see that last year, 2019, it indicated 20% chance by July 7th, and it's really like a 10%. So it's absolutely not a certainty that we will get there this year either. But we're not the it's not the worst year anyway. It's better than 2018, 2017. Right. So I've been following this Dutch guy or Belgian guy called Chris van Stenbergen, and he's been talking about the Blue Ocean event as well, and I've been slightly provoked or triggered by him because he says that at mid-July there probably will only be sea ice in the Arctic Basin that I'm talking about, and in the Canadian archipelago, and maybe in the Beaufort Sea. So yeah, that's his guess. He says probably. So that's sort of half acceptable, but you can see here that one of the biggest export areas where you export sea ice, also where the Arctic gets rid of its sea ice, it goes down this current here along the east coast of Greenland. And when the wind is blowing, like this week and last week, with cold weather in northern Europe, then there is huge transport of ice down the Greenland coast, and that happens every year, every summer. So to suggest that there will be no sea ice down this east coast is kind of not that insightful, because why would that stop? It will always keep exporting ice down here, and it goes down here to melt, basically. So you wouldn't expect the Greenland Sea to go totally ice-free in July, at least. And then you have this tweet that says it basically says that he puts a possible Blue Ocean event on the 15th of August and a sea ice-free Arctic on the 21st of September. So the last one of these is he says absolutely no sea ice, 0 meters of sea ice in September. And he says Blue Ocean event limit of 1 million square kilometers by the 15th of August, which I don't think there's any reason to believe. He lists a few reasons, but it never happened before, so you would have to follow it very closely in order to predict it. And even then, me at least, I would only predict it for September, because it never happened before. So why would it happen in like July or August? And you can go over here, and it says Blue Ocean event or less than 1 million square kilometers of sea ice. That's the definition of Blue Ocean event. What's the chance of a Blue Ocean event? It says to have a Blue Ocean event of virtually no sea ice in July, 20%. That's a gross exaggeration, I would say. And to have it in August, 70%, and in September, 100%. I mean, just to list 100% chance of a Blue Ocean event in September is disingenuous, because all it takes is like a couple of cold weeks or something, then it doesn't happen. So it's definitely not 100%. We don't know. There's a lot of things we don't know, but we do know it's not 100%. So that just so disqualifies this tweeter instantly. And it lists a lot of areas where he thinks it's breaking up very fast, but that's just sort of name dropping. Yeah, and here it says that 1 to 16 of these seas will probably be sea ice free before the 15th of July. That's like 7 days from now. I don't think so. There will be sea ice in most of them, although not very much. But even the Hudson will have sea ice. Hudson Bay will have sea ice on the 15th of July, just not very much, right? And this narrow strait on the west coast of Greenland is also an export channel. So you will have ice being exported down here. Once the ice bridge goes here in the narrow strait and the Lincoln Sea. So you will expect to have sea ice down here as well as the east coast, the Greenland Sea and the Fram Strait between Svalbard and Greenland, as I said. So forgetting that just means that you haven't been following this for very long, because you see sea ice there every single summer, right? And then the last tweet here is he's gone up to 45% probability of a blue ocean event in July. I have no idea where he takes that from. And for August, 85%. It's like he has a comma error or something. Like it should be 10% for September and 8.5 for August and 4.5 for July, even though July is just impossible. It just can't happen in July. For pretty obvious reasons. So, but it's interesting to follow this guy and to wait for him to eat crow when his very, very eager predictions fall flat on their tummy in mid-July and then in August. So, a kind of opposite to this, you have this Zeke Housefather guy who writes for some big fancy newspaper or magazine in America. And he says to motivate climate action, we need to both acknowledge the gravity of the problem and paint a hopeful picture of what a prosperous, equitable, and just low-carbon future will look like. Doomism and defeatism are counterproductive. So there are several things to say about this. First of all, his aim, his goal is to motivate climate action, right? That's up here. And acknowledge the gravity of the problem. Yes, absolutely. But I don't agree that we should paint a hopeful picture. Because that's sort of entering politics into it. You want to motivate climate action, so therefore you will paint a picture that is more beautiful than it really is in reality. And there's a lot to be said for just painting a truthful picture instead of something that looks easy to do or looks, exaggerate the chances of succeeding. Climate action, I think, would be a good idea in the 1960s or 70s. These days, not so much, because, middle-aged people standing in the street singing Staying Alive, I don't know, it sort of just doesn't really change anything, does it? So, yeah, I totally agree that we shouldn't over-exaggerate the climate impact, like this van Stensbergen in the previous slide. It's not like all the ice is going to melt tomorrow or next week. And yeah, we can see from the other activity of this guy that he really wants some hardcore climate action or new policies or revolutions to start immediately. But I think, and therefore he's kind of exaggerating this development. But I think it doesn't, in the long run, it doesn't serve you any good to say everything will disappear, everything will melt like overnight, because the chicken will come home to roost, and people will see that, oh, this guy was just an alarmist who was exaggerating these things, and it takes a lot of time to melt all that stuff. And like, for instance, the Greenland ice sheet on land is gonna take decades to melt, no matter how much warmer it gets. It's not like it can be gone by 2022 or something. Yeah, so I'm not sure what he means by doomism and defeatism. I think science should be about making the best maps of where we are right now, and also the best predictions for how soon and how fast things will go. I don't think scientists ought to spend a lot of time thinking whether or not their science results, their findings, will motivate climate action or not, because we don't have any idea what kind of climate action would suffice at this point. It's like it's just decades too late to do anything. And I think if you look at the Paris Agreement, I think more clever people than me have already figured out that if every nation did everything they pledged in the Paris Agreement, we would still end up at 4 degrees warming or even more compared to pre-industrial, and that would basically send us down a slippery slope of warmer and warmer every decade until we reach 10 or 12 degrees warmer than pre-industrial. So I don't know what he means about with climate action. I would like to see that, and I'm sure his kid would like to see that. But I don't think we should lie to people or paint overly hopeful pictures about our chances of getting there at the cost of giving accurate scientific pictures of where we're at. Okay, bye.